everyone, and welcome back to Brink of Speed. My name is Mike, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 most iconic Corvettes ever made. And really, I narrowed it down to my favorite Corvettes of all time. And I believe that you guys will agree that all of these are super iconic and just amazing Corvettes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. Ever since I was a little kid and I saw my first Corvette, I fell in love with that car right off the bat. I absolutely loved the way it looked. However, once I started learning about the Corvette and, started looking at all the earlier models and trying to decide whether I liked those or not, there was one that always stuck out in my mind and always stuck out to me that I absolutely loved, and that was the 1963 Stingray with the split window. And that was the only year that they did that, and it was the second generation Corvette. It was absolutely a gorgeous car, and the engineers built this car to be, quite a bit different than the earlier C1 first generation Corvette. And one thing that I love about this car is that you could get this Corvette in 4 different engine options. They had a 250 horsepower V8, a 300 horsepower V8, a 340 horsepower engine, and a 360 horsepower engine, all V8s. And I just think that's really, really neat that Chevrolet gave you that many options. So the next Corvette that I'm going to talk about that I believe is super iconic is the 1990 through 95 Corvette ZR1. It was like nothing else that Corvette or GM had ever produced before. This was, in their mind, a supercar, and it really performed like a supercar. It went out there and, it kept up with the 1990s Ferraris like the Testarossa. It kept up with the Lamborghini Countach and also the Porsche 911 Turbo. It came out and it looked amazing, it drove amazing, and it performed exactly like GM was expecting it to. It even had a top speed of 172 miles an hour, and for 380 horsepower, that was pretty amazing. This next car is something that I will have in my garage sooner than later, and it is a 1996 Corvette Grand Sport. So still in the C4 body style. It was the last year of that body style. This car is probably my favorite looking Corvette of all time until the C7 came out. I absolutely love the look of this C4 Grand Sport. And the neat thing about it is there was only one Grand Sport before this, but it wasn't a true car open to the public to buy. It was actually a race car. It was really neat when they brought this car out because it was a tribute to that first Grand Sport early on, and they only made 1,000 of these cars total. So it's super, super rare. And so anyway, I will definitely have one of these in my garage sometime in the near future, and I believe it is definitely an iconic Corvette. The next car in my lineup is the 2000 through 2004 Corvette Z06. And I actually had the pleasure of owning a C5 50th anniversary Corvette Z06. And let me tell you something about that car. It was absolutely an amazing car to own. I took it autocrossing. I took it to the drag strip. I took it to Mexico. You name it, I did it with that car. And Not only was it gorgeous on the outside, it was gorgeous on the inside. It was, high technology for the time. Basically, the first car that someone could basically say, I own a street legal race car, because that's really what it was. People were cleaning up at autocross tracks with that car and road course racing with that car. Now, moving on. This is another car that I had the pleasure of owning, and it is the C6 Z06, another iconic car. It came with a engine that, a lot of people rant and rave over. They absolutely think it's one of the best engines ever built by GM, which is the LS7 7-liter 427 V8. And this car came with 505 horsepower, which was so awesome. I remember when I owned the C5 Z06, it had 405 horsepower. And I was anxiously awaiting the brand new C6 Z06 to come out. And once it did, and I found out that it had another 100 horsepower than my car, I couldn't even imagine what that felt like, because my car already was like, it had more power than I needed, that's for sure. But this C6 Z06 came out. It blew the minds of, race car drivers. It got air at the Nürburgring, which would have scared me. But anyway, the race car drivers were kind of used to getting air on that particular section of track. So they were very impressed with this car right away, because it was a bone stock Corvette getting air, where most of the time that was super or exotic cars. However, it's the engine that I feel like makes this car a very iconic car. Now, moving on, we're going to stay in the C6 category. When I first heard about this car coming out, I was more excited for this car than any other car I had ever heard about in my lifetime. And that was because it had been so long since we had had a ZR1 that when they announced the C6 ZR1, man, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was super excited, and I know there was a lot of other people out there that were too. And so this car, because it was able to surpass the 200 mile an hour speed, it had a supercharged engine and 638 horsepower. This, to me, is a very iconic car, especially because a lot of this car was built from carbon fiber, and they had carbon fiber all over it. The front splitter, the side skirts, the rear spoiler, the roof, even the hood was carbon fiber, but it was painted. And so this was the first time that GM got very serious about the Corvette and put lots of carbon fiber on it. And with this Corvette ZR1 getting to a top speed of 205 miles an hour, I believe that makes this car super iconic. And also because of it having the first supercharged engine ever in a Corvette. In 2015, when the Stingray came out, or I should say 2014, when the Stingray came out, this car was unbelievable. It was like no other Corvette I had ever seen. It blew my mind when I saw just the Stingray alone. The first time I ever saw a brand new 2014 Stingray, I thought, man, GM has finally done it. They have finally built a car that can hold its own against the high-end European car market. And I'm talking about supercars and exotic cars. The way that this car looked, I just felt like, man, this Stingray is on another level than the C5 or the C6 were. And so I feel like because of that right there, just looks only, that the C7 Stingray is definitely an iconic Corvette. We'll just stick again in the C7 Corvette family, because the next iconic vet, in my opinion, is the Z06. This car, when it came out, it absolutely made my jaw hit the ground. I mean, it literally blew my mind how gorgeous it was. When I saw the Stingray the first time, I thought there's no way they can make that car look that much better. And when they came out with the Z06 with the wide body and all of the, aero that they put on there, it just blew my mind how gorgeous that car was. And I knew that one day I would definitely own a C7 Z06. And that Z06 came right out of the gate with 650 horsepower and 650 foot-pounds of torque. So from the C5 to the C6, the Z06 went up 100 horsepower. From the C6 to the C7, it went up 145 horsepower, which made me even more happy and excited with GM. And on top of that, they gave it a magnetic ride, which helped this car become the best handling Corvette ever built. The skid pad G-forces were incredible. It blew away the competition there. Its 0 to 60 time was around 3 seconds. Its quarter mile time was low 11s. And just everything about this car was absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, being an owner of one now, it is my dream car. I mean, as far as Corvettes go, it is my dream Corvette. And so I definitely feel like the C7 Z06 is an iconic Corvette. And now that brings us to the last C7 that we will ever see, which is the 2019 ZR1. And for me, this is by far the number one iconic vet of all time because of what this car has done and accomplished so far. Not only does this car do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, but it does the quarter mile in 10.6 seconds. And it has a top speed of 212 miles an hour. This is the fastest Corvette ever built with 755 horsepower. This ZR1 is freaking phenomenal. And on top of that, it handles better than any other Corvette ever built. And it proved that just recently at Virginia International Raceway, but it also proved it on the longest, most intense track in the world, known as the Nürburgring. And everybody makes their claims on the Nürburgring. And for it to come in tied for 5th with a Porsche that is over $1 million with almost 900 horsepower and all-wheel drive, and it's a hybrid, and it has all of these fancy gadgets that make this car supposed to be, one of the best supercar exotic cars out there. For this $140,000 Corvette ZR1 to tie for 5th for overall fastest time at the Nürburgring makes this 2019 Corvette ZR1 my favorite iconic Corvette of all time. That's it for now, guys. With that being said, please leave me a big thumbs up if you love this video. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think and what you guys feel is the top 10 list or the top 5 list of all time iconic Corvettes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell button next to it so that you're notified when new content comes out. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you out on the road.